This is the first story I ever wrote, and I wrote this 3 years ago, and I'm just gonna read it now. Most fairy tales start with once upon a time. Since this is a reality tale, I'm unsure how to begin, so I'll start by saying it all started 41 years ago, June 10th, 1980. I was born. I typically hear others list off birth time, weight, and every other bit of information their mom remembered about the day they were born. Since I was taken from my mother at 18 months, and it was well known we weren't to talk about her ever, that's all the information I have. I don't know what others remember about their early years. Maybe a little, maybe a lot. The only thing I remember is surviving. Things were not good between my mother and father. I've heard stories, but the reality is my brother and I deserved better, and we were put in the middle of our parents' toxic BS. I was 18 months old when my father kidnapped my brother and I. He stole us one night and ran home to his parents from Ontario, Canada, to New Brunswick, Canada. He did this not because he was the better parent, but because he wanted my mother to suffer. That's the only thing that makes any sense. And while he could try to deny it, I think that all the stuff that happened after he stole us only proves me right. He used my grandparents for cover, knowing my mother came from a toxic home and didn't have the same help he did. I've been told the judge told them both that neither one of them deserved to have us, but because my father lived with my grandparents, he got custody. I've heard spotty stories about how or why my mother stopped coming to see us, but knowing what I do about toxic people and how they operate, and knowing how brutal Randy could be, I don't blame her for not coming anymore. I know for me the years spent living with my grandparents are the only years where I was shown any love or affection, and are a large part of why I'm able to love and show affection today. Without them in those very short years, I can't say who and what I might be today. Maybe a street kid riddled with drug and alcohol issues to try to forget, much like who and what my brother became. The abuse really started when Randy decided to move back to Ontario. He now had total control and custody of my brother and I, and he knew he could do with us as he wanted now. He knew my mother wouldn't interfere, as he made sure of it. I don't know if my brother ever had a chance. It seemed to me like he was doomed from the start. I learned very quickly off the back of the abuse I witnessed him suffer. That's not to say that I didn't suffer the same. I did. But I was able to learn really quickly, and still to this day my brother's screams haunt me. While I imagine other children dreamed of sunshine and rainbows and Prince Charming, I dreamed of surviving, when my next meal might be, and what having a mom might feel like. For the entirety of my childhood, I thought my father worked his butt off to support us, and that's why he was never home. But as an adult, Randy admitted that he almost lost the house several times because he was spending most of his time at the casino. When we moved to Homeland, it was with Randy and his girlfriend Rhonda. Unfortunately for my brother and I, she was much like him. And once again the abuse changed. Rhonda had a daughter named Melody, and what at first seemed like a built-in friend for me ended once again in disappointment. Rhonda liked to walk around the house naked, and Melody and I were forced to shower with her. Rhonda also had a big dog, and since there were only 3 rooms upstairs, my brother got the boot to the basement. My brother had a real fear of the dark that Randy knew about, as the guttural screams were not within his control. I can hear those screams now, and knew then what I know now. My brother never had a chance. Things between Randy and Rhonda didn't last long, and while this part of the story comes from elsewhere, I feel it explains things quite nicely. Turns out Rhonda was sleeping with a Boy Scout leader, and had found herself pregnant. Apparently she knew well enough not to tell Randy right away, and instead told my aunt. As my aunt explained to me, my aunt, told Rhonda that she had better find herself a father, because Randy had had a vasectomy. My aunt then said that Rhonda told her she was moving out when Randy left for out of town. My aunt contacted Randy and told him what was going on, and instead of delaying his out-of-town trip, he went. Rhonda packed up and left, and that was the first time I can remember being abandoned, but certainly not the last. The next years are a blur, with no real time frame and sporadic memories. The next memory I have feels like a core memory. No matter how many times I remember it, it never changes. And I can remember thinking my neck was going to snap. If I can't keep my neck controlled better, I don't remember how or why I was being punished, but I remember the punishment like it was yesterday. After this punishment, I had no way of knowing this, but after this punishment, the abuse changed again. Randy grabbed me by the arms and violently shook me, to the point I thought my neck would snap, and I'd better get control of my neck or I'm not going to live. When I woke up the next morning, to get myself ready for school, I noticed the finger-shaped bruises on my arms, but thought nothing of it. I wore a sweater to school, so it must have been colder, but the only frame of reference I have to draw from is that my brother was still at the same school as I was, so it must have been grade 2, as he was 3 years older. I'm not sure how the teachers were made aware, if they saw my arms, or if my brother told them, or if it was me. I don't know. Children's Aid was called, and because of that, and them, the physical abuse stopped. But that's when the abandonment and neglect started full force. My brother and I were on our own. We'd get the basics, but no more than that. Now I had abandonment and neglect from Randy, and where the physical abuse stopped with him, it was picked up by my brother, who was now my physical abuser. I was truly on my own from that day forward. Randy liked his pop, and he liked his foods, and because he didn't like sharing, he locked it all up, so my brother and I wouldn't have access. That started the next several years' worth of trauma and abuse, because my brother would then break into Randy's room or the basement where he had a stockpile of pop and goodies, and steal anything that wasn't nailed down. And because Randy was never home, I got the blame too, because it wasn't fair to blame one over the other. He couldn't beat us, so we get locked into our rooms for weeks, so he wouldn't have to see us. He'd also send us to our rooms in the morning without meals as a punishment. To this day, I struggle to eat regularly and often miss meals because I forget to eat. My brother continued to deteriorate, and Randy wasn't able to deal. So my brother was sent to group homes and in and out of jail. I learned from that too, that if I couldn't get my shit together, I'd be sent away too. I don't know if it's Stockholm Syndrome, but I'd say that by witnessing my brother's abuse and experiencing the abuse first from Randy and then my brother, I was the perfect little minion, and eventually became Randy's biggest enabler. I had my own run-in with the law, and one time was more than enough for me. When the neglect and abandonment started, it very honestly felt like a dream. I could do whatever I wanted, with whomever I wanted, and there were almost no rules. I thought I was free. Little did I know that now life was going to teach me a few things. I had started cutting myself, and was in with some not nice people and thought myself in a gang. I wanted to be tough, so no one would hurt me anymore, and that's what seemed to work for me in that time. I saw a girl that was friends with one of my friends, and we had a conversation, and I was trying to show how tough I was, so I cut my arm in front of her, and I can't remember the exact words. But "I'll kill you" came into the mix, and the next thing I know is the police are at my door, and Randy told them they can have me. He didn't join me, he didn't get me a lawyer, and even though the officer said I could come back home, he said, "No, you can keep her." I don't know how old I was, but I know I was a minor. I had never been in a police station, never mind a jail cell, but that night I got my first and thankfully only real experience in a jail cell. I remember trying to hide myself going to the bathroom as a camera was pointed right at me. And they don't give you a blanket or pillow. Thankfully there wasn't anyone else there that I could see, and other than being cold and scared, I was otherwise okay. They got me McDonald's for breakfast, and when they asked me what I wanted to drink, I asked for a coffee, and that was the first time I had coffee. I had to go to court after that, as I was charged with threatening, or something similar to that. Randy brought me to court, as there was no way I could walk there. He stood in the courtroom with me, but otherwise not present. He spoke to the judge when he was addressed, and left me to fend for myself otherwise. Because it was my first offense and I was a minor, I received a year's probation and community service hours. As soon as court was done, though, Randy let me know I was on my own there, too. He wasn't going to help me figure out how or where to do my community service, and he certainly wasn't going to bring me to probation. I did a lot of walking that year, and once I figured out what community service hours even were and where I could serve them, I did that too. I've learned all that I know through doing. It's a really fucking harsh way to learn when you've never had a soft place to lay your head. Inside me ran a constant threat assessment because I didn't want to be caught unaware again. Somewhere through the physical, psychological, emotional abandonment and neglect, I became the perfect chameleon. I could be whoever I needed to be to get me through. I could adapt, adjust, and be whomever I needed or wanted to be, depending on what type of mistreatment was coming my way. I stuffed down who I am at my core and learned the hard way that that little girl was too weak to withstand the onslaught, especially because I could never accurately predict when or where and with whom I'd have an issue. That's when the tough exterior was put into place. Thankfully, and to this day, I don't know how I managed it, but I saved the best of me and hid it deeply within. Because I somehow knew if I was ever going to be able to pull myself out of this shit, I would need my heart and my soul. Things sort of leveled out after court and probation, and just when I got used to the neglect and abandonment, things changed once again. Randy had been interested in one of my street friends' mom, and after her and her husband separated, he heavily pursued her. With over-the-top gifts and attention, she was now a single mom with 3 kids, and I guess Randy was tired of the prostitutes and call centers for women he would frequent. They lived down the street from us, but because of her split with her ex, she wasn't going to be able to keep their house. So Randy decided to move them in. Things weren't too bad at the beginning, but things quickly deteriorated, as in those toxic cycles typically do. Chris, my brother, was around long enough to come and help himself to her wedding rings and some other things of value, and in true fashion, because no one actually knew who it was, I was blamed as well. We were broken into again later down the line, and even though my friend Dee knew I didn't know her mom smoked cannabis, never mind had some in her room, and my friend Dee was sitting at the school smoking cannabis that was magically the same quantity with her friend Jamie, who was known for breaking into people's houses, I got the blame for that shit too. I've noticed my language, whether by speaking or writing, I say honestly or truthfully so often I know the damage of being accused of doing things I never did, because the person couldn't be sure has stayed with me. Anytime someone loses something or something goes missing, I go a little crazy trying to look for that thing for them so they won't think it was me. That's when the drinking, smoking cannabis, and experimenting with other drugs started. I learned very quickly I didn't like feeling out of control. If I was drinking, as soon as I started slurring my words or feeling out of control, I'd stop. The same goes for other drugs. I never liked feeling out of control because that made me feel unsafe, and I chose not to partake or pretended to partake and just either threw what was given to me or I would give it to someone else. Around this time is when the neighborhood kids started going to raves. I never went. It was not my cup of tea, and after hearing stories of fights and what type of drugs they were all into, I was glad. I've always struggled to make real and lasting bonds with people that weren't toxic or had strings attached. I honestly didn't even know there were such relationships. Things ended with Dee's mom and Randy in typical toxic fashion. Dee had asked her mother the night before if her boyfriend could stay the night, as he beat his father the night before and had gotten kicked out of his house and had nowhere to stay. Of course, her mom said yes, and that yes changed everything again. The next morning we all woke up, and I had, at that point, said fuck it to school. I wasn't planning to go. I asked Eve what she was planning to do, and she told me she intended to go to school. So I asked her what she was planning to do with her boyfriend, and she told me that he'd be staying at our house until she got home. I told her that wasn't going to work for me, and what she didn't know is that he would put his hands on me when she wasn't around, and I didn't like it, and I tried to avoid him. So I told her either she stays home or he has to go. She then grabbed me by my face and slammed my head into the cupboard. I finally got away from her and was talking to her mother, who told me, if you want to phone the police and have her charged, I will stand by you. I took some time to think as I didn't want her to get into trouble. I decided to go into the police department so I could speak to the officer myself and be assured that she wouldn't be charged. And when he came to our house and everyone sat down to talk. The officer explained the consequences of her behavior and that he was just giving her a warning for now and that she can't just go around assaulting people and there are rules we all have to follow. At the end of what he was saying, he looked at Dee and asked her if she would ever do anything like this again. Her response was, "I don't know." And he said, "Pardon me," to which she said, "Well, if she pisses me off again, I don't know how I will react." He then told her to get her shoes and her coat on and that she was going to be charged. Words and actions honestly never lined up back in my world back then, but never so much as Dee's mom telling me I had her support, only then to find out I didn't. She moved out shortly after with her other 2 children as Dee wasn't allowed to come back. The amount of abuse and the change of the abuse and all that goes with it set me up for toxic, abusive relationships that failed time and time again in this make-up and break-up toxic cycle that has lasted the entirety of my life. Until almost a year ago, January 16, 2021, I decided enough is enough. I'm taking my life back. I will find out who I am, even if it kills me. A year ago today, I started my journey. I had no idea then what I'd be in for, as rock bottom isn't kind to anyone. But this journey has taught me what I am made of and who I am at my core, and what I value and what I never again am willing to tolerate. I've said goodbye to every single person I've ever known from my past. And while I still have love for them, I'm never again willing to participate in the toxic cycle that's really all I've ever known. Trying to build my life now with so many missing pieces and no real knowledge of what normal is, I most definitely struggle to change over from survival to living. It's a foreign concept to me. And as per usual, I'm learning by doing. It's how I've learned everything. And the truth is, I don't know any other way. I'm not where I want to be or all the way who I want to be, but there's still a lot of unlearning to be done. But I'm fucking proud of the woman I am today, and I remain committed to keep going.